On December 13th, 2025, Conan was hosting a Christmas party, which, to quote Hollywood Reporter, was chanced to quote, shake off the bad mojo of 2025, and look forward toward a happier and more hopeful new year. Rob Reiner is there with his wife Michelle and their 32-year-old son Nick, not because they wanted to, but because they were allegedly too afraid to leave him alone. And for those who don't know who Rob is, he was one of Hollywood's most successful directors, directing The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, This Is Spinal Tap, A Few Good Men, and he was one of the industry's most influential voices. And they were in Los Angeles, a city of separate worlds that rarely touch but have a lot more in common than everyone thinks. Down at street level, you've got the sprawl, the traffic, the density, people living paycheck to paycheck in apartments they can barely afford. Drive west and up into the hills, and that's where the party was hosted. Here you'll enter a different world behind the gates, where all the celebrities live and socialize. We're talking Bel Air, Brentwood, and the Pacific Palisades, where you find houses behind gates on clean streets, sealed away inside of their own bubble. This is where Hollywood really lives. It's not just an industry, but a completely separate reality with its own rules, its own currency, its own definition of what makes something matter. Up here, problems don't look like problems at first. They look like something money and management can handle, until they can't, and something finally breaks through and gets treated as a shocking rupture rather than the endpoint of a long visible process. Nick is at that party with his parents and their friends, wandering through and asking people the same question over and over, always curious about who these people are and whether they're famous or not. Some are used to it, some think he's drunk, others wonder if he's on something, but almost everyone was uncomfortable. A few even assumed that he may have wandered in from one of the other worlds outside of the hills. When a few guests suggested calling for help, Conan intervened and discouraged calling 911, saying it was his house and he didn't want to escalate the situation or make this public. Eventually, Rob and Nick apparently got into a very loud argument that others overheard, prompting the family to embarrassingly leave the party early. These are household names in fame and show business, but they're dealing with a very real human crisis. Nick was clearly extremely unwell, and when you scroll through some of the videos surfacing now, you can see his behavior has been concerning for a very long time. Allegedly, he was furious at Bill Hader when Hader responded that he was in the middle of a private conversation. But you still don't think that someone is genuinely capable of doing something as monstrous as this. Sometime in the early morning hours of December 14th, Rob and Michelle Reiner were killed in their Brentwood home by what police called multiple sharp force injuries. Around 12:15 AM, Nick was then seen near a gas station close to the family home. By 4 AM, he checked into the Pierside Hotel in Santa Monica, where hotel staff later found the shower and mattress covered in blood. Tragically, it was Rob and Michelle's daughter that discovered the bodies, and Nick was arrested at 9:15 PM near the University of Southern California. Trump then dumped that wild post on Truth Social, which was just kind of insane, and it speaks to how desensitized everyone is to violence now. It's just the same as when all the memification of Charlie Kirk's murder took over everyone's timeline. Quote, a very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as the Trump derangement syndrome. Here's something important to understand about Rob himself. Regardless of his political views, he didn't grow up in this broken system. He was from just a different generation entirely, growing up on the East Coast in the Bronx. Billy Crystal, who worked with him on When Harry Met Sally, said Rob was, quote, one of the most decent human beings I've ever known. When he transitioned to directing in the 80s, he didn't just hire the most expensive team and chase spectacle. Spinal Tap was a low-budget movie consisting of almost only improvised dialogue, giving viewers the impression they were watching a real heavy metal band. And it's why it was hugely successful, because it was authentic. It was almost the opposite of all modern movies today. And it was in the 2000s and 2010s, as Hollywood transformed into something more algorithmic and hollow, that Rob just seemed to get uncomfortable. He made fewer films and focused more on political advocacy. Friends said he was just frustrated with what the industry had become, with the endless franchises, the risk aversion, and focus on opening weekends over lasting impact. And then there was Nick. To try to understand what happened, the first thing everyone did was look at his life. For starters, he'd been homeless in Maine, New Jersey, and Texas. He'd also been diagnosed with schizophrenia in addition to suffering from drug addiction, and did have a history of violent outbursts, even apparently having shocking childhood tantrums, though clearly nothing as horrific as this. Reports are now saying that the Reiner family definitely knew his behavior had become more erratic in the lead up to this night.
For the past couple of weeks, both Michelle and Rob have had concerns about Nick's behavior. He'd become a bit more erratic. It seems in the past couple of weeks he became more erratic. His behavior became unpredictable. Even at the party, I believe one of the guests has now come out and said that they overheard Nick arguing, and even Rob was expressing concerns with his own safety when it comes to Nick.
Back in 2015, Rob had directed a film called Being Charlie, co-written by Nick and a friend he met in rehab. The movie follows an 18-year-old drug addict whose father, a former actor running for governor, struggles with his son's addiction. The film revealed that Rob and Michelle had sent Nick to 18 facilities, sometimes against his own will. The first time, he was just 14 years old. Rob admitted he overreacted by sending him to a treatment center when he caught him using drugs. And Rob admitted that when Nick would tell us it wasn't working for him, we wouldn't listen. He said we were desperate, and because the people had diplomas on their wall, we listened to them when we should have been listening. The question here is why this can happen. Why does first-class treatment in every sense possible fail so badly? How many failings are there along the way to something like this happening? Rehab is a staple of the Hollywood lifestyle, but the majority relapse within the first year. Higher if you're going back to the exact same environment that broke you, which is exactly what happened to Nick and loads of celebrity children before him. The age divide has a lot to do with it. Nick was born into a totally different celebrity dynamic entirely. 2000s Hollywood, where identity is performance, community is transactional, and mental illness gets commodified into content. Rob was trying to apply old school values, genuine engagement, painful honesty, working through trauma as art, to a system that had become fundamentally incompatible with those values. A $50,000 a month facility has quarterly earnings targets. The therapist billing $500 an hour has a schedule to maintain. Nobody's incentive is to sit with you forever until you get better. It does work for some people, but it's really a paid substitute for real care. And this is Los Angeles all over. It's full of fake approximations of the real thing. You'll walk around Hollywood and realize the city doesn't have a cathedral, but it does have Scientology's Celebrity Center International in the center of Hollywood, with 39 hotel rooms and celebrities like Tom Cruise and John Travolta giving sermons that the rest of us probably wouldn't connect with. As you walk around, you'll find an Erewhon, the upscale organic grocery chain where Hailey Bieber's $22 strawberry glazed skin smoothie sells 40,000 units monthly, and you can get a nice little jar of Manuka honey with it for $78. It's the temple in LA where the religion practices the cult of wellness. Wellness in this world is something that money can buy, but Nick and other tragic Hollywood nepo baby stories prove it can't. Look at what's happening right now with Ariana Grande and the Wicked movie. The way the whole thing just feels completely detached from reality. The baby voices, the faux sincerity, the theatre kid effect taken to an almost cultish level. People outside the bubble can tell something's off immediately. Ariana Grande and Cynthia look like they're actually starving. Inside it though, this all gets treated as authentic and meaningful, so it just goes unchallenged. Challenging all this strange performative behavior is offensive and doesn't square with the Hollywood values where eccentricism and disordered behavior blurs into one thing. But if Ariana Grande was your kid, you'd probably be worried looking at these photos. Same with Jaden Smith and his castle head, and his out-of-touch social media posts. With a freaky father like Will Smith who's just completely losing his mind performing to fake AI crowds, and doing everything possible to get attention, there's just no normal reference points for someone like him. Especially with his mum and dad's fame and very public relationship problems. Living up in one of these gated hills in Los Angeles, you're just so out of touch you almost don't know what real reality ever is. Normal people get to find out who they are and others are through trial and error. Celebrity kids, or those celebrity adjacent like Nick, never get that. They grew up in this hall of mirrors where every reflection is distorted by fame and status, and every small choice is magnified by the press, which all falls into this concept called ontological insecurity, basically a pervasive uncertainty about whether you even exist as a real person. For most of us, that's like a 3 AM existential crisis we once had in university, or it might just happen after severe stress or bereavement. But for kids immersed in this world of fame in Los Angeles, that's just your baseline reality. When there's always a camera around, when your parents' careers depend partly on maintaining a certain image, when every interaction is about what you can get from other people and their status, when the main thing you care about is your follower count, where every birthday party might end up in TMZ, it begs the question, where's the line between the real you and the performance. I mean, you see this just endlessly all the time. The Rock, Will Smith, James Corden, Justin Bieber, even Diddy. We've spoken about this so many times on the channel. Child stars get pushed into adult spaces surrounded by power, money, and secrecy. Years later, addiction, eating disorders, and abuse. The public eventually forgets who these people are. I mean, just think of Britney when she went from being the biggest celebrity ever to a Hollywood footnote. And so the way that Nick describes his relationship in that interview really revealed a whole lot about what it means to grow up. He only felt close to his father when watching him work, when Rob was being Rob Reiner the director, not Rob Reiner the dad. But the real truth is, stories like this are just a microcosm of something going on all over Los Angeles. For years, its grinding systems turned personal crisis into a logistical problem, something to be handled through access, money, and management. That's how people can deteriorate in plain view without ever becoming anyone else's responsibility. Problems don't belong to the group, they belong to the individual. If you are rich, you can just pay $100,000 a month for rehab or send someone to a new therapist with a different degree from a different Ivy League university. LA still gets away with the solution as it's been running the most successful marketing campaign in human history for about a century. Hollywood exported this image of sunshine, palm trees, beaches, beautiful people living their best lives. The place where you reinvent yourself and anything becomes possible. Just look at La La Land as the perfect case study, a movie that won 6 Oscars and got nominated for 14. And it's basically a love letter to Los Angeles that romanticized struggling artists chasing their dreams in the city. Millions of people move to the city because they believe these kinds of stories, but the dream is unfortunately just a dream for 99.99% of people today. As LA is a modern city right now in 2025, it's just completely broken. It's an endless suburban sprawl, with no third spaces, individualistic, living in isolated boxes, with the streets lined with homeless, desperate people. Things like public transportation are filthy, unsafe, and not even working properly. The city spends billions and it just seemingly evaporates. Instead, you have to usually spend 2 hours a day minimum sitting in traffic sealed in your metal box, while the built environment around you is literally falling apart. Away from the hills and the beach, there are whole neighborhoods without proper roads or sidewalks. Endless homeless encampments full of fentanyl addicts with rotting limbs unable to access life-saving healthcare. Or even when they can, they just choose not to. All of this accumulates to the fact that if you live up in the hills away from all of this stuff, you just become immune to it. You become numb to human emotion, which is crazy when you realize LA's GDP is over $1 trillion, which is higher than Switzerland or even the Netherlands. And yet this is just a fact of life. If you're one of these people, you will just drive past it every day. It's just there, part of the landscape, and after a while, you just stop seeing it. The city teaches you how to not see things, and if you want community, you have to pay for it. That's why underneath all the R1 smoothies, group meditation sessions, sound baths, vitamin drips, is one of the loneliest cities in the world. So guess what happens when people become persistently isolated and anxious? Well, they often develop mental illnesses or turn to substances to cope. So you take someone, especially a vulnerable kid like Nick Reiner with psychiatric risk factors, drop them into an environment where substances are everywhere and private doctors will prescribe whatever keeps you functional, surrounded by people who are just trying to get something from you because of your dad's fame, can just lead to absolute psychoticness. And no amount of rehab is going to fix that when the environment never changes. If it's just normal to take Adderall to focus, Xanax to calm down, Ambien to sleep, and Coke and alcohol on weekends to feel something again, there's now an entire ecosystem of sober living influencers in the hills, people documenting their recovery journey for content, monetizing their trauma, building personal brands around sobriety. Mental health has become an aesthetic too. Therapy speak dominates conversations, everyone's setting boundaries and doing the work and healing their inner child. But a lot of this is just performative. You're not processing trauma, you're just posting about processing trauma, which leads to a strange parallel here to Rob Reiner's most famous film. This Is Spinal Tap is fundamentally about people who've lost perspective, a rock band so deep inside their own world that they can't see how absurd it's become. Everyone thinks they're being sincere when they're not. Like when you turn the amplifier up to 11 thinking that one extra number is going to make everything better. Rob understood what happens when you lack self-awareness perfectly when he was making the movie. How you can do everything you're supposed to do and still fail because you're operating in a framework that doesn't work. In the film's case, that's the rock industry. In LA, it's real life. A city full of people just following broken systems, trying their best within structures that ensure failure, eventually rupturing incidences that appear random but are really the endpoint of that much larger, more visible process that becomes invisible the closer you are to it.